on the other side.
Okay. Good morning to the people that just joined us. Nice to see you. How are you doing? A bit of background noise there. Okay. How's everybody doing? Everybody happy? Everybody's very quiet. You can say on the chat how you're doing. Okay.
Hello,
Good morning. Hello, Agatha. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Where are you today?
I am in Poland, in Wrocław.
In Wrocław. Okay. Okay. Is it very chilly there, like it is where I am this morning in Brno?
Yes, it is. It was all the time above zero, but today it is zero or a bit below. So the winter is coming.
Yes, yes. And Mario has just said, "Oh, hello, I'm in Spain." Nice. So yeah, and I was out last night about 10 o'clock, and it was -3 here I'm back in Brno at the moment. So, but yeah, but it's that time of year, isn't it? So it is what it is. Winter is here.
Indeed, indeed.
Indeed, indeed. But lovely to see you. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for invitation.
Oh, our pleasure. Just will just be a couple of minutes, that a few more people join, and then we'll get started. Okie dokie. All right.
Hello, good morning.
Morning, Monica. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Right. I'm good. I'm good. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Bright and breezy from Krakow, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. We'll just kind of wait one more minute, I think, and then I'll get started. All right. I think there's a few more people going to join us. And we're nearly around about 30 as we speak. So we'll get started. Okay. Yeah, still people joining. The old chat up there. Oh, it's better. Okay. Okay then. So I think we'll get started. So a very warm welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us on on what could well be a historic day today. So okay, so today the Callisto Grand Credit and Collections Coffee Club. Um, is going to be looking at how we can exceed KPIs through talent-driven digital transformation. So largely this is going to be we're going to look at some of the challenges that we have in our area, and what the challenges are. Maybe look at some things that become kind of accepted norms, and let's see if we can look at things through a different sort of from a different perspective, a different way. Let's try and we'll turn a few things on their head. So as it says here, this session will be recorded for CPD accreditation and certification. You will receive a certificate from from ourselves and from CPD, showing that you've invested 1 hour of your time in this session today. And we'll talk a little bit more about CPD later, I'm sure. Also, as always, for those of you who are regulars with the Coffee Club and those of you that are new to it, the intention of these sessions is that they're interactive. It's not a one-way webinar with me rattling on for the next hour or so. I really want your comments and opinions as well, please. So at any time, please feel free to comment on the chat, or if you want to talk in person, which would be great as well, just put your hand up and join in the conversation. So it's a very, very free form session. It's not, there's no kind of fixed kind of times for me to do certain things at certain times. Okay, so all right then. So let's get cracking. Let's get cracking. Yes. So really what we're going to look at today, we're going to look at sort of the KPIs and how to achieve exceptional KPIs and execute successful digitization projects, which is really what everybody's about these days. Everybody wants to, technology is everywhere and everything, quite rightly. It's a big part of what we do as well in Callisto with our partners. Yet it seems that some of as I'll show shortly, there's a high percentage of projects that don't seem to reach the levels that are expected, right? And we're sort of going to explore some of that today, right? Our intention as Callisto is that when, particularly, let's say, technology projects are embarked upon, that there is a very good chance that they will achieve what they're intended to achieve, which is obviously much faster processing, better results, and ideally also a significant amount of engagement from the talent pool. And of course, we are talking particularly about credit or order to cash, but it applies across the whole kind of GBS area, and indeed sort of across business in general, whether it's GBS, BPO, or just an independent business. So that's what we're going to look at. And like I said, please jump in any time with your comments, whether you agree or disagree. I look forward to hearing from you as we go through the next hour or so. Okay. So I think we start with sort of a fact, right? Sort of we are talking primarily about trade receivables, all right? And this is in every company, without exception. It is the biggest, the most important, the most complex. And if it's not managed properly, potentially your most expensive asset, right? It costs an awful lot to maintain the trade receivables, or rather what I'm referring to here is if the money is not collected on time and companies have to borrow, they have to borrow money from the bank for short-term borrowings to pay wages or fuel bills or whatever. Now with there being interest rates, the cost of borrowing now is not cheap, right? It used to be, and I'll cover that in a little while. And also I think to emphasize the importance of what we do. We in Callisto have a real problem with anything that we do in our area being referred to as back office or transactional or a process or suitable for, I don't know, outsourcing or low cost, and all these kind of negative sort of connotations that words that get sort of put upon us, because then 80 to 90% of world trade involves some form of credit. So it is the absolute fundament of what we do in the business world, right? We can't work without it. So in our opinion, I believe we are actually we should be the highest profile department in every organization. Yeah. General ledger and accounts payable and the sales guys will say something different, but basically money don't come in on time. You can't really do much else. So there we start with a controversial statement. Okay. So if you Google and you see this anywhere, ABSL, SSON, the Big Four, Hackett Group, and so on, all these advisory bodies will you'll see, I say through Google, you'll see that somewhere between 36 and 75% of projects fail, right? And this is an astonishingly high number. And as I was saying at the beginning, why is that, right? And many reasons are given. They're probably quite true. A lot of it is because the expectations are too high. Often the projects take too long, so the sort of the interest and the emphasis wears off, and then they move on to other projects, and so on. And I think in our world, in the credit world, the technology we have right now, I'm talking particularly about technology, I think this is the most exciting area, and it is very much the credit world that is leading the way right now in financial technology, right? When you think of all the service providers, the predictive analytics, the now we're looking at intelligent automation, started to move into AI, collection chatbots, and all the rest of it. So it's very much the 8 or 10 companies that are in the, if you like, the Gartner Magic Quadrant that are really leading the fight, not just credit, I believe they're leading the finance technology. So why then are we having all these problems with why are projects not achieving what they're expected to achieve? Right. So the biggest problem is EBITDA, right? Where companies focus on reducing cost rather than looking at the bigger picture. If anybody's not familiar with EBITDA, please let me know. The second one that is connected to that, very much connected to that, is top-down budgets. Budgets are being set by executives that don't have a full, real understanding of the operational requirements, and also work very much in line with the EBITDA. They work very much short term, right? So they're not looking at 3, 4, 5 years development, which is really what is essential for us, which is kind of ironic when you think about it, that in the operation side of every business, 3, 4, 5 year plans is an absolute given. So why not in our area as well? The next problem we have is EBITDA. The next problem we have is inexperienced management. I'll cover that in a little while. The biggest problem we have is perhaps EBITDA. Another one that's interesting, and I'll explain this in a little bit shortly as well, is inappropriate training, right? Not the right training suitable for for the jobs that we're doing. And this is also kind of connected with EBITDA, budgets, and experience management. And here I'm kind of referring to things like LinkedIn Learning. Nothing wrong with LinkedIn Learning. It's very good, but there's nothing in LinkedIn Learning that really helps us in our profession. You might be seeing a bit of a pattern now. So many organizations still work in silos, limiting what people do, right? You work in Cash App, that's all you do. You work in collections, that's all you do. Still goes on very much. And not setting targets, right? Not actually knowing this is kind of ironic, I think, when so much talk in the shared service center world, GBS world, is about what is excellence? How do you measure it? What does it look like? And yet so many people working in collections, particularly in collections, cash allocation as well. They're not given targets. They don't understand what DSO is. They don't understand what bad debt provision is. So how can how can we set out to implement technology if you're not really actually kind of quite clear where it is you're going with that, right? So now you might see, I say you might see a bit of a thread there. The EBITDA cutting costs, I think, really is at the fundament of all of this, and what I'm really encouraging all of you to consider is that when you come across these examples of all of these things, but particularly oh, we can't do this because of EBITDA, start to challenge it, push back, right? Measure the EBITDA against the millions or billions of profits that your companies are making, right? And say, no, we want 50,000, we want 100,000, we want 1 million to implement something. Yeah, that figure versus the amount of money that we're making in our company. Plus there's a return on investment, there'll ultimately be savings and so on. So when it comes to top-down budgets, EBITDA, and so on, it's very much, I think now is the time when we have to push back a little bit, right? This, what I've been saying so far, very much fits with a problem I have, a bug I have. Those of you who know me will know that I have a big problem with the word journey. Much so to the point that all my team and people close around me are sort of forbidden from saying the word. Right? We were not allowed to say the J word within Callisto organization, and it's also one of the small pleasures we have that when we do our conference, like we had in Prague last month, and others coming up, when we receive the PowerPoints from our presenters, we go through them all, and anybody who's got the J word in there, we change it. Right, we change it for something else. So we are a journey-free zone in Callisto. And why is this? Right, it's not just me rattling on. This is not just some balmy old man who's got this sort of journey fetish. The reason why really is that this word is bandied about all the time, and it's an example of a lot of kind of management speak, a lot of things that people just say without really thinking what it actually means. Right now, a journey, according to dictionary, is an act of traveling from one place to another, right? Meaning you know where you are, where you start, and you know where you're going, right? So, for example, yesterday I was in Budapest in the afternoon, and last night I was in Brno. I knew where I was and I knew where I was going, and I definitely knew where I was going. And my definition of excellence was when I got there, right? So if companies are not setting targets and don't know what excellence is, or they don't set a level of excellence, you can't really go on a journey, right? You're just meandering around, aimlessly, like we do perhaps on a Sunday afternoon when the weather's nice, with not kind of particularly heading anywhere. We just see where we end up, right? And this is one of the critical reasons why projects fail, right? Because they're not definite. They actually been able to say, right, yes, we bought this product, we implemented this product, we did all these subsequent changes and amendments and so on as a result of this implementation, because we wanted to achieve such and such a target, DSO, overdues, unapplied cash, whatever it may be. So that is a definite journey, right? But otherwise, it's not. Interestingly, and to think about, to really kind of think about what we're saying, there are 47 other synonyms for this word. All right. My favorite one is peregrination. But because that's quite a long word, so I tend to use things like Odyssey voyage or safari. Okay, so but please, if you're just kind of think about it, right? The main point is to think about what we're saying, and to do we really mean what we're saying. I was saying earlier about inexperienced management, and one of the key reasons for that can kind of be measured in this graph here. Now, just excuse me one sec. Right. So this graph is basically my working life in interest rates and inflation rates. Now, that probably says a lot about how sad I am. But really, what I'm trying to illustrate here. So this actually, it started 45 years ago, I think today, right? It was around about the 5th or the 6th of November in 1979. 17-year-old me started work in what is now HSBC. Right. But at that time, as you can see, and this is in the UK, but this applied pretty much across Western Europe, the USA, um, and other parts of the world as well. At that time, interest rates were, as you can see, 17%. Inflation rates weren't much far behind. All through the 80s and into the 90s, you can see that interest rates were pretty high, and this was normal. Right? We had so many interest rate spikes, inflation rate spikes, bank controlling flows of money. If you could put this against the backdrop of people, people of my generation, if you like, we were growing up, getting married, having children, buying houses with interest rates that were in double figures, right? So, and this was normal, right? And then as we go forward to the time after the last global recession, 2008, 2009, you see then that for 10 years, through the whole from 2010 to 2020, interest rates were practically zero, or indeed were zero. And this is where the inexperience comes in, and that so many people, many of you, senior executives, entered the workplace around this time, right? So it was just taken that this is normal, right? That this is the way the world was, is, and forever will be. But as you can see, that decade, 2010 to 2020, that was the freak. That was the outlier. Because as we all know, on the right-hand side, coming into the 2020s for various reasons, interest rates and inflation rates are going up again, right? So you can see that period of time, that was the outlier. And I'm no economist, but I rather suspect that the world for the next decade or so will be more, in terms of interest and inflation rates, will be more turbulent, right? So it'll be a lot more fluctuality. This is what makes what we do in the credit order to cash world so important, right? Because the first rule of credit is never assume, right? Because we've had enough experience in this decade, right? That with COVID and the Ukraine situation, now the Middle East situation, now who knows what's going to happen in the next few hours in the United States, and geopolitical situations in so many countries around the world, so much instability. But unfortunately, this is the reality, right? So you kind of heard it here first, right? That, and this working in our world where things change every minute, every day. This is why we are a profession. This is why we can't be subject to EBITDA. We can't be subject to top-down budgets. We have to be invested in, right? So, and so that's, this is kind of how it's going to be. Yep. When we come into GBS world, right? This is the expectations. This is the plans from ABSL, Czech Republic, but this applies to many others as well. All the ABSL groups, SSON, Hackett, Gartner, the Big Four, etc. They're all in their surveys of, particularly in the GBS world, they are all saying things very similar to this, right? That they want to accelerate digital transformation. They want to reduce operating costs through automation. They want to increase automation of business and technology progress. Absolutely correct. Absolutely spot on. That's what it should be. On the right-hand side, they want to cultivate a customer-centric and innovation culture. More agility into the service model, and establish end-to-end process ownership. All of these things are perfect, and it's recognized that the majority of organizations want to upgrade talent. They want to develop competency models, execute gap analysis, see why people are leaving, and so on. Execute talent plans and innovation. All of these things are absolutely what it should be. interestingly, if you go back through to ABSL and other GBS reports for around about 20 years, going back to the early 2000s, you'll find that they've all been saying the same thing for nearly 20 years. Right. I know this because in 2010 I graduated with a BA honors degree in credit management. And as I was doing my module studies and theses, I was because I was this was the time I entered the GBS world about 20 years ago. I was uh, I was looking for research material because I wanted to latch on everything I was doing in my degree to shared services. Uh, so the only real reports around at the time were from Deloitte and PwC, and they were saying roughly the same thing. So all the way through 2007, 8, 9, 10, all the way through the 2010s, and up to today, they're saying the same thing. And I believe the reason why these aspirations are still largely aspirations is going back to our earlier chart of showing that cost was king, right? Or cost reduction was king. So you can't really achieve these aspirations if all you're really focused on is keeping the cost down, right? So it's kind of one or the other, really. It can't be both. So all of this is absolutely spot on, and this is absolutely how it should be. And we in Callisto, we support this 100%, right? And we want this to happen. In addition to what's been said there, these are the key skills that are needed for each individual working in credit order to cash, right, to achieve this digitization success, or indeed just success in general. So everybody needs to be encouraged to understand business acumen, right? Real business acumen, not a silo, but end-to-end business acumen. To understand data savviness, really, what are we looking at here with our information, right? What have we got in front of us? Where does this data come from? What is it made up of? What do I do with it when it's in front of me? And how can I use this information for the greater good of the organization, right? It's interesting. So these are the aspirations. Remember, this is what's on the previous slide. Yeah, so many people working in credit collections, cash app, and so on are not familiar with the term DSO. They're not familiar with what is bad debt provision. They don't have collection targets, right? So how can you can't really have these things, business acumen, strategic mindset, if people are not being informed and encouraged to understand and drive the basics, right? This is what I'm talking about there really is page one in the credit world. Yet there are many organizations who ask people what is working in collections, what is DSO, and they won't know what it actually means or what its significance is. That leads to strategy, right? So business acumen, data savviness, strategic mindset. I said earlier, there's so many geopolitical and inflationary things going on in the world, right? It's our role and responsibility, irrespective of our grade, irrespective of our job, to be talking to management, talking to our line managers, taking it up the line. This happened in the news yesterday. How is this going to affect us? Ships blocking the Suez Canal a few years ago. How does that affect our supply chain? How does that affect our manufacturing? How are we going to approach our customers and talk to them? We got 14-day payment terms, yet because all the ships are stuck in the Suez Canal, our deliveries are being 60 days later. What's our strategy to change that? Leading into being agile and change orientation. So fact, we have a real world situation. This is impacting us. What do we do quickly to adjust to that? Us in credit O2C, right? So we can be proactive, involved. Remember, the desire from GBS is to have people involved in the end-to-end processes. To be involved in end-to-end processes, you have to understand the much wider picture, which leads to us being able to be creative and innovative. And all of that leads to much more effective relationship management, relationships as in with all stakeholders, internal and external, being able to communicate effectively, negotiate effectively internally and externally, saying why I need this 100 euro credit note because it's going to release a 100,000 euro invoice, right? And I need it, and the consequences of having it or indeed not having it, right? Okay, and this is kind of what's required, and indeed this is largely what we do in Callisto. This is what we encourage, right? Um, Anybody wants to add anything? I say the chat is very quiet at the moment, so I've not seen anything come through. Uh, please, please tell us what you're thinking. All right, I'm looking forward to hearing your seeing your comments or indeed having a chat about this. Um, okay, this is kind of along the same theme. A few thank you, Daniel. You're on a journey of discovery. All right, I'll ask you to can you cross that out and say it again, please? Right. On a serious note, I came across this on LinkedIn on the yellow side a few weeks ago. This is from Simon Sinek. I think many of you probably follow Simon Sinek. I do. I think he's a very good orator. He has some very good ideas. And it says here, a culture is strong when people work with each other for each other. A culture is weak when people work against each other for themselves. And that kind of resonated with me. And there were lots of people in LinkedIn and other sources, loads and loads of stuff about leadership, right? Loads of stuff about leadership, all very good, you know, inspirational quotations, inspirational leaders, and so on. And lots of responses to these, you know, so yeah, I agree with that. Fantastic. Yeah, and all that. But it's evident that with all these responses, that it's not always kind of thinking, what does that really mean, right? How does that apply in real life? How does that apply to me? Now, this one kind of resonated with me, right? So the culture is strong when people work with each other, and the culture is weak when people work against each other. I posted the comment on the left, right? I said, can it be argued that working against each other for themselves occur when senior executives prioritize profits, shareholder dividends, and EBITDA over investing in talent at all levels? You know, looking after the shareholders, people who have millions and millions of dollars get millions and millions of more dollars. All we want down our end, 50, 60, 70, 100,000 euro to invest in our talent. Oh no, we can't do that. Travel bans, conference bans, yeah, training bans, kind of any of that stuff, right? So many businesses are reluctant to spend small amounts in upskilling, yet there is every effort from this time of the year now, Q4. How many of you are getting red lines through the travel? No, you can't travel here, can't go anywhere, can't do anything. People with regional management titles, global management titles, can't travel out of their own office, right? So, yeah, to me, that's an anathema. You either have a global title, which means you travel globally, or you're not, right? So this is an example really kind of starting to drill down to what these expressions mean. And I think a company works against itself, as it says here, when EBITDA, as we call it, worshipping on the altar of EBITDA. This is the great God to the detriment of anything else. And that connects to top-down budgeting and all the rest of it. And this is fundamentally why projects don't succeed to the potential that they possibly can. So let's look at this through another lens now. I think one of the biggest areas of concern really is around attrition, right? I think high double-figure percentage attrition rates has just become an accepted norm with the sort of corporate get out of blaming the younger generations, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen whatever we are now. That apparently these people are lazy, they're feckless, they're disloyal, they look after themselves, are only worried about themselves. That, by the way, is absolute garbage, right? It is not true at all, right? That's just become a convenient, a convenient kind of phrase as an explanation for the consequences of EBITDA, right? If you don't invest in your people, they move on, right? So according to SSON, again, this is the SSON for Czech Republic and Latvia, right? So they're very similar. That in 2023, the overall attrition rate was 16%. And there was an average salary increase of 6.5%. That's good. And then there was this phrase at the bottom saying like the average time people spend in a company, right, is 3.9 years. And it was heralded as a wonderful thing, right? That the average retention had gone up by 4 months compared 2022 to 2023. Whoopie doos, right? I don't think particularly that's something to be proud of, right? I think we should be looking at double, treble the amount of time people are in companies, 10 years and so on. Moving up through the grades in the credit world, starting cash app, move to collections, go to risk, do disputes, do analysis, project management, implementation. There is so much that can be done within our world, right? The challenge to this as well, by the way, when this appeared, and I challenged this, and I said, does this mean that people spend that time in one department, or are they just moving around the company so they're on the payroll for 3.9 years? The answer was they're on the payroll for 3.9 years, meaning, and people have an average job time of 9 months. So that means that roughly in this period, people have had 4 different jobs. And often, as you all know, that means they go from AR to AP, maybe to GL, maybe to customer service, maybe to HR, and then they leave, right? But organizations are kind of deluding themselves that if people stay on the payroll for 4 years, that's a good thing. How can you build successful projects? Yeah. How can you have implementations if the average kind of time in one area is less than 1 year? Right? Please tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I see from these statistics and so on. And these are the answers I get when I ask these questions. So let's look at this 16% attrition, what it really means, right? And I'm sure many of you, well, I know many of you there are people managers, so you're facing this every day, right? So if we look at it, 16% attrition rate, right? So that means that 16% of people have resigned and they're under notice. 16% of people they're probably thinking about leaving, right? Which means that 16% of people have probably just joined the company, and 16% of people are shadowing the people that just joined. So when you add all that up and you look at it from a holistic point of view, that potentially means at any one time, 64% of credit team, collections team, cash app, whatever, all of it, because it's all connected, is not working at full production. So it's not a figure in isolation. You multiply it by at least 4. All right. So that I believe is the reality. All right. So with all of that going on, again, I come back to our initial point. Why do projects fail? Why do projects not achieve their maximum? Maybe it's in here, right? Maybe we should start here. Let's look at why we have such a churn of people. Let's make that the KPI, right? The leading KPI, that we really arrest this. We get this into single figures, and then maybe even less than that, right? And what do we have to do to make that happen? Right. That this is the, I believe this is the fundamental, right? It's not the fault of Gen X, Y, Z. It's not them. You give an encouraging, interesting, invigorating, inspiring workplace, people will stay, right? You give them a silo to work in without being encouraged to, be involved in the end to end. You're 26 years old. Would you stay? I blooming wouldn't. That's for sure. That's a fact. So this, I believe, this is where we need to start. And we have, for those of you who have been party to Callisto training courses, or you've seen presentations from myself before, you know that when we're talking about targets, many of you will recall, or for those of you that are new to this, we have our definition of excellence, and we have it down to this 2.5%, right? Now it's 2.5% in attrition. We think that's what we should be aiming for, that the turnover rate within the organization is very low, really, right? And by attrition, I mean people that leave the department or leave the company, right? Ideally, we want people to stay within the credit world. Like I said, they can move from cash app to collections to risk to disputes and so on, all within and all moving up. There's the career path, right? You can establish career paths. Everybody needs to have experience of every single component part of what we do, right? There's 100 projects that sit alongside what we do. So much data that we have that is not analyzed because people don't know what they don't know. They don't know what can be analyzed. Often because the master data is owned by somebody else, right? Master data is a critical part of what we do. Yet when you work in a shared service center, 10, 15, 20 different countries, you'll see there's so much stuff in there that's similar, but not the same. So you have duplications. For those of you who've done lean, you know anything that's duplicated is a waste, right? If it's not the same, if it's not standardized, which was the whole point of shared services when they started 40 years ago, that was the point of shared services, was to standardize across countries. We still largely have this, we're in France, we'll do this. We're in Germany, we'll do that. We're in the UK, we'll do this, right? Different databases, still just working in silos. 2.5% overdues, right? If you aim for your overdues to only be 2.5%, and that's your holy grail, everything else will pull in behind it. This is why you do technology implementations. This should be the target that we should be aiming for, right? And when we know that that's the North Star, like I said, everything else, all the qualities below that, the culture of the company changes because you're saying, right, this is what we're aiming for. So sales guys have to be more aware of collections, quality of master data, quality of orders, which moves on to the next one, getting the invoices right first time. If you measure the number of credit notes raised to fix erroneous invoices, if that's higher than 2.5%, then it's not possible to achieve a good level of overdues if you've got a high level of disputes. It goes without saying. Why isn't there more quality control on getting invoices right first time? Right. It's the second most important representation of a company's quality after the actual products that you sell. Right? And there is millions invested in quality control in all companies, pharmaceutical, automotive, whatever else it is that you do. Why can't there be the same quality control on invoices? It's the second thing that represents the quality of your company, the quality of data in your company. And unapplied cash, likewise, right? With all the technologies that are around, the understanding of how it all works now, MT940s, ERP systems, and so on. The unapplied cash first time round should be really, really, really low, right? And again, that's a target that also should be aimed for. At our conference a month ago, we did a session on S4 HANA, by the way, and we're going to set up user groups in the near future for our members. One of the things that came out of the S4 HANA transition was that where the people that spoke for us, they were saying they had 70, 80, 90% automated cash, had it for a long time. When they went through the S4 HANA transition, it blew a lot of it out. Right. And they went right back to like 25, 30%, and they had to do it all over again to get it to comply with the S4 HANA requirements. So just something to bear in mind there. All right. So, but yeah, 2.5% unapplied cash. So, in ABSL Latvia, they were saying that one of the problems they have, they're looking to bring people in from other countries because they believe they haven't got the talents that they need in their own country. Right? They haven't got local people, and this again, this is common. I'm only looking at this one in isolation. They all say pretty much the same, right? So I'm not picking on any particular country or region. My argument is that they're in Latvia, Czech Republic, Poland, wherever else, they have the talent. They're not being trained properly. They're not being developed properly. They're not being invested properly. The people are there, right, already. Everybody can learn credit. You don't have to have a degree in finance. I left school at 16, two O levels in English and one in history, right? As far away as you could get from being any good in credit control. right? But I had great teachers, I had people that invested in me, I had wonderful mentors, and then I was curious myself, right? And I was encouraged to be curious. Somebody just said they're a geologist. Yes, thank you, Monica. See, and you are a case in point, and you are now a director, right, of credit, exactly. And your training was in geology, right? Um, the question, the job hopper generation. Well, yeah, and this is a good point, Nikki, because well, this is my point. You know that people job hopping has become an accepted norm, right? I think it's down to us as a collective, right? As a a GBS. Well, this is the sort of things that ABSL and so on should be campaigning for. I think is to reverse these trends, and it comes back to my point. You can only reverse these trends if you set up an interesting career path. Likewise with your question, Theo, I agree. When you go into in school or university, high school, universities, we can show people what this means, right? We can make this really relevant, really interesting. I sometimes do some guest presenting at universities, um, and I do exactly this. You look at the balance sheet, you look at trade receivables, one line, boring, 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 right? But then you open up the window and you show all the magic things that that one line in trade receivables actually represents, right? So yes, it's engaging with likes of ourselves and many of you, who have great experience to go into schools, universities, share your stories, right? And show how the credit world is a fantastic place to be, right? But again, it also needs to be driven from your employers, right? That their culture needs to change as well, because you don't want people coming out of university full of excitement and ambition, and then they're rammed into cash allocation silo, right? I mean, that's just going to suck the life out of people. So we're back into that attrition cycle again. Yeah.
Yeah, but Mark, one thing, of course, employer culture is very important, but we as a managers can also switch it if we don't see that our managers are doing it very well, right? So we still can coach our people to and develop them without having even budgets for additional trainings. Like we have
Absolutely.
we have like coffee clubs with you, right? We have
Totally.
they can have internal projects when they will gather new skills and develop themselves. We have to also coach them that the self-development depends on them. So the more pushy they are and eager to learn, the more they will get, basically. We are not the mothers, right, of our employees. We will not take their hands and show them everything and guide them through the whole professional life. They have to do it for themselves. So they have to fight for it, basically.
Absolutely, and when I said earlier about inexperienced managers, it's exactly that, right? If you grow up in a silo kind of process and that's all you know, then that's all you're going to impart. If you, as a manager, you're encouraged, and this all comes back to my belly aching about EBITDA. If you're not allowed to go on customer visits, if you're not allowed to go on site visits, to factory visits, training courses, yeah, like you said, being encouraged to do this. This is free, right? In theory, there should be 20,000 people on this call, right? Don't you have to get out of bed? It's free, and you get a CPD accreditation, right? But so many people go, no, I'm a cash allocation clerk. What's that got to do with me? Or whatever, right? And you're right. And there are people on this call, Monica. There are companies on this call that are doing exactly what you said, right? They encourage their people to say, well, you don't know what you're going to learn. No, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're going to learn. It's free. You just got to sit there for an hour and listen. And listen to people like you who've just said, what you just said has more value than I've been rattling on with for an hour because you're operational, you're doing this every day, right? And other people, Theo's been commenting, Nikki's been commenting, people that I know, that are at the coalface every day facing this. And I totally agree with you. It's down to if you have an inspirational personality, you'll bring people with you. But that needs, and I know, talking to you, Monica, as a case in point, I know you've had a couple of great mentors in your time, who've encouraged you to do all the things we're talking about, to be curious, to go to the conferences, to go on site visits, and so on. So thank you for
So
that.
everything, I would say that everything depends on the proper mentor and coach. And this is so important for people to understand. It's not the training that will give you everything. It's experience and the good coach, good, maybe I call it guide.
Yes.
Company.
And that's where, I mean, and that's where like we're talking, if I have time, we'll talk a bit about CPD, continuous professional development. You know, every one of these sessions that people attend, they get this CPD certificate, which shows they've invested 1 hour of their time learning something new or becoming aware of something new, right? And the more of these you gather over a year, when you're looking to career advance, if two people go forward, two people go forward with a similar CV, one's got 20 hours of CPD because they've been to various things of hours, but it doesn't have to be hours. Lots of other companies offer CPD initiatives as well. That would tilt the balance for me, saying, well, this person's curious and wants to learn more. This one, not so. You know, they've got the same kind of job experience and process experience, but this one wants to understand more about the wider world, or, you know, more of what's going on. They're adding more layers to themselves, which builds into things like their EQ as well, which, you know, we'll touch on in a second as well, right? And comes back. So yes, Theo, absolutely, it's the role of the managers to make the jobs more interesting. But as Monica said, the managers also need to be encouraged to have a wider understanding themselves, right? And that's why I'm saying, if you're a global manager, a regional manager, you can't accept when you say, well, you can't travel anywhere. You know, if you're responsible for 15 countries and then in quarter forward say, right, you're not going anywhere now. How can you be a regional manager if you can't manage your region? And for all the wonder of Zoom and Teams and all the rest of it, you cannot beat being together. And that's how you build your experience. That's how you build your charisma, if you like. Really following on from what you're saying, David, there, right? You know, you can only really be that sort of inspirational leader if, you know, if you're seeing the bigger world, right? If you're just in your office or working from home, you know, what kind of extra can you add other than really just the process, right? You know, or, you know, conversations with people like we're having now. You got to get out there. You got to touch it, smell it, feel it, right? Really see your products, what the clients do with them, all that kind of thing. Moving on, and thanks for these brilliant comments. Let's keep them rolling, everybody, please. Another source of the problem, right? This again, so this is now all the training courses that are offered, right, to employees, and these are all good things, right? But if we just zero in on the elements that really kind of around our area, financial stuff, we see CIMA, CIA, ACCA, FCCA, GARP, IFRS. Is there anything there about credit management? No. Right. These are all fantastic courses. You know, when Callisto grows up, we want to be as big as CIMA and ACCA. We want to be the go-to place. You say credit, you say Callisto, right? Like with accounting, you say CIMA, ACCA, right? These are all excellent things, but managerial coaching, soft skills, these are all fantastic things, but you've got to know the basics, right? Coming back to the points about management and leadership that are coming through on the chat here. So, I mean, and I'll give you an example of this. I was doing a consultancy a couple of years ago, talking to some guys. Again, they weren't sure about DSO. I was explaining it to them, how you calculate it, what it means, how you can improve it, how you connect it to your ledger, and so on. And then a couple of the young guys got up halfway through this discussion. I said, where are you going? And they said, well, we're going on a Franklin Covey course now, right? Leadership course. I said, why are you going on a Franklin Covey leadership course when you don't understand the basics of the job? Well, management to pay for it and said that we can, right? But there's nothing wrong with those courses, but they've got to be at the right time, right? They have to be at the right time. You can't go on a Franklin Covey course learning about leadership if you don't know the basics of the job, right? All this stuff is pretty cyclical, right? So here we are. So everyone's off in CIMA, ACCA, and so on. And I've seen this myself. You know, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, of those of you that have done these courses, there's about what, one module or an hour or something dedicated to credit within those within those courses. So yeah, so just to follow on from that, so we, based on our operational experience and listening to many of you, we built a qualification course, right? We have a certificate program and we have a diploma program. So there are professional qualifications. There's the UK ICM, and there are many others as well. We're not the only ones. So there are professional qualifications in the credit order to cash world, right? CIMA and ACCA are fantastic if you're going to be an accountant or an auditor and moving in that direction, right? Talking about career paths. So this is our competency metric. So this is going back to a lot of what you guys are saying, right? About how management should be leading people through, and it overlaps with what I've been saying about the curse of EBITDA. This is the 3, 4, 5 year development plan, right? Or something similar to this, right? Right from when people come in at the beginning, they should be encouraged to be leaders, right? And there's a steady plan for them to work through their career right from day one. I often hear when we do our training, when people talk to us about our certificate and so on, they say, well, I'll train a couple of people. I'll train the team leaders first, and then we'll look at the rest, right? Or even worse, we're doing a technology implementation, so we'll learn the processes and then we'll do the training, your training later, right? That's completely the wrong way around, right? Everybody should be encouraged to understand the full potential of the area they're working in end to end from day one. And as we said, this is why projects fail. A contributory factor to why the projects fail is the majority of operational people that are involved with a software project. They don't know the full potential of what they can do, so they're not challenging the implementation. So all that's really happening first time round is they're replicating what went before, and then there might be a few whistles and bells they might get to later, but really all these fantastic service providers, they should be challenged, right? I want this report, I want it to do that, because I know that we should be doing this, we should be drilling down this, we should have these predictive analytics. Very few of the people that are involved in using these tools are able to challenge this, right? So you see this kind of vicious circle, right? I would love to have junior people in collections, cash app, risk, and so on, as part of the project teams, doing the basic research on the master data, and them saying what they want in a perfect world, right? This is what we should be aspiring to. If we're going to implement, spend $1 million implementing whoever, right? This is what we want out of it. And ultimately, we want to reduce our overdues from wherever we are to 2.5%, right? And these are the things that we need to do it, right? The reporting connects to the business units. The reporting connects to the sales guys. So they have visibility in 100 different ways, of the products, of the overdues, of the invoices, of the disputes, of the reasons, the credit limits, and so on, right? It's kind of all there in front of us. It just needs this little shift, right? Fundamentally, as I said at the beginning, what others call the end-to-end business, we call it the credit multiverse, right? A multiverse is a series of universes. And if you think sort of supply chain, purchasing, manufacturing is one, compliance and so on is another, finance, GL, etc. These are all universes, right? And when you bring them all together, you form this multiverse, and we are slap bang center in the middle of that, right? It's us that drives the cash flow, the lifeblood of every company, right? We're not back office, we're not cheap, we're not transactional, and all the rest of it. We are the most important part of business, right? Okay, so we're sort of getting to the end, the last 2 or 3 minutes. I'm talking about being curious, right? Curious means asking all these questions all the time. For those of you who've got 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds, why? That's what we should be encouraging from people, right? And if you want to remember this little verse by Rudyard Kipling, it says, I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when, how and where and who. And you keep asking those questions every day, particularly why can't I travel? Why have we got cost restrictions? Why can't we implement? Why can't we do this training course? Why can't I go to conference? Right? Why can't I go on that workshop? Right? Keep asking. Eventually, somebody say, well, well, they probably won't get satisfactory answers, right? But when you do, when you are encouraged to do these things, this is where emotional intelligence comes from, right? It's understanding other people's point of view, understanding other people's circumstances, understanding other people's environment, internally within your organization and externally. All right. And this is what builds the retention, because now you've got something interesting going on, right? I talked a bit about silos. I'll just cover that. This is, as it says here, this is not best practice. So if you look sort of the third line down, you've got all the pillars of credit O2C, risk, billing, disputes, collections, cash allocation. In this case, all reporting to different line managers, right? Now, this is a bit extreme, but if any one of this is how it should be, right? All joined up, one credit director, one culture, one vision, as Freddie Mercury said, right? But if all of this is all together, you've got your culture, you've got your standardization. But if any one of these sections, billing and particularly risk, it never fails to amaze me how so many companies, the risk manager reports to somebody else, doesn't report to the credit manager, or the line of the credit management. They're a different line. Why? In the old days, we used to call what we did credit control, because we control credit, right? The credit limit is a fundamental part of the collections tool, right? But so many organizations, many people don't even know what the credit limits are, right, for their customers. So to finish off then, the elements for success, these are all the things we're aiming to improve, project digitization, talent retention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and including employer branding as well, right? And we in Callisto have an assessment, a self-assessment, right? That's very quick and simple to do. We call it the CPM, the Callisto Performance Measure. It's made up of 3 sections. It's a very simple point scoring mechanism. I'd be happy to demonstrate it to all of you. I've just taken a snapshot of it here. So you can see, in the talent section, we break that down to all the things I've been talking about, really: workshops, visits, empowerment, responsibility, having some budget responsibility, being allowed to do write-offs and so on. And you got this scoring. You can see in the top right-hand corner, in this particular model, the scoring is not very good, right? So for the talent investment, we go on to the next section. In technology, and again, we're asking questions: do you have technology in risk, invoicing, collections, and so on? In the portfolio management, do you have dunning processes, segmentation, these other things? Is everybody aware of the credit policy, terms and conditions, service level agreements, all these kind of things, right? So again, very simple point scoring mechanism. This can be done in a couple of hours, your self-assessment. So you can see in this section, and then our theory is if the talent is at a good level, the technology investments at a good level, therefore your results are going to be at a good level, right? And we highlight that the 4 that I was showing earlier, and one more as well, right? We talk about disputes too. So you can see within a couple of hours you can have a snapshot of where you are, and then you got the overview at the end, right? You had the 3 sections together. So we can help you with all these things, and we can help you pinpoint the areas where perhaps you need to invest in, or look in, or focus on. Okay. So this is the CPM. Please get in touch on this. I know we're just about running out of time, so we'll finish there. Thank you for the brilliant conversation. Some great chat here, which we will gather and we will share it with you all, and we will respond as well. Couple of notes for your diary. We have a credit clinic coming up on November the 20th, so 2 weeks. Similar format again. We have a one-day conference coming up in London on March the 20th. We'd love to see you all there. We've early birds already available. It's on LinkedIn. Our conference next year will be in Budapest in October. Details of that will be released quite soon. Please follow us on LinkedIn, and also I will say a lot of what we're doing now, a lot of these things are only going to be available for Callisto members going into next year. So the coffee club is certainly one area where we're going to be suggesting or inviting you to join our membership, because members will get priority, right? And so we are going to be changing one or two things within Callisto early in the new year. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for the great comments. I hope there's some food for thought from what we've been discussing today. Catch up with you soon. In the meantime, take care, stay safe, God bless, Carpe Diem, and see you all very soon. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.